Room 214 is yours, Emma. The words drifted across the busy nurses' station, with a sweetness that didn't match the smiles surrounding them. A few nurses exchanged quick glances. One of them quietly picked up her phone. Another leaned against the counter, as if she had just been handed front-row seats to a show way. Emma Carter, 25 years old, and barely 3 weeks into her first nursing job at St. I. Gabriel Memorial Hospital in Baltimore. Maryland looked up from the medication cart with a grateful smile. "My first VIP patient," she asked. Senior charge nurse Vanessa Brooks folded her arms. You could say that she slid a patient chart across the desk. "Retired Navy SEAL, doesn't cooperate. Doesn't like nurses, doesn't respond to anyone." Someone behind the station chuckled. 3 days, another voice added. Nobody's gotten through to him. Vanessa looked Emma straight in the eye. "Try not to make things worse." Emma nodded politely. "I'll do my best." She picked up the chart and started walking toward room 214. The laughter began the moment she turned the corner. $5 says she's back in under 2 minutes. Nah, another nurse replied. She won't even make it through introductions. No one noticed Officer Maya Johnson, standing near the reception desk, finishing paperwork from a routine hospital security report. A veteran police officer with the Baltimore Police Department, Maya had spent enough years wearing a badge to recognize the sound of bullying, disguised as workplace humor. She glanced toward the hallway where Emma had disappeared. Then back toward the nurses who were laughing. Something about it didn't sit right. Hospitals were supposed to heal people, not entertain themselves at someone else's expense. Officer Johnson quietly closed her notebook, but stayed where she was watching without interrupting. Across the corridor, Emma slowed her pace before reaching room 214. Her father had taught her something years ago that she never forgot. Every patient has a story long before they become your patient. She repeated those words silently. Every time she reached the hospital door, it reminded her to treat people as human beings before seeing them as medical charts. Outside room 214, she stopped. The hallway suddenly felt quieter than the rest of the hospital. The television mounted near the ceiling played muted evening news while families drifted past carrying flowers, balloons, and overnight bags. Emma glanced down at the chart one more time. Commander Marcus Reed, age 62. Retired U.S. Navy SEAL post-operative shoulder reconstruction. Limited communication? She frowned. Limited communication wasn't a personality. It wasn't an attitude. It wasn't an excuse to stop trying. Inside the room, the former SEAL sat near the window, watching rain slide down the glass. The city lights reflected across the polished floor while the heart monitor kept a slow, steady rhythm. He never turned toward the doorway. Emma gently knocked anyway. No response. She waited. Still nothing. Most people would have assumed he was ignoring them. Emma didn't, because silence and refusal were not always the same thing. Back at the nurses' station, another burst of laughter echoed through the corridor. One nurse quietly opened her phone's camera. She's still in there. Vanessa smiled confidently. Give it another minute. Officer Maya Johnson looked from the group to the closed hospital door. Once again, experience had taught her that real courage rarely arrived with applause. Sometimes it looked like a rookie walking into a room where everyone else expected failure. Sometimes leadership meant speaking up. Other times it meant paying close attention before deciding who actually needed protecting. She slipped her notebook into her pocket and remained exactly where she was, her eyes fixed on room 214 as the laughter behind her slowly faded into curious silence. Emma rested her hand lightly on the doorframe before stepping inside. "Good evening, Commander Hayes," she said gently, her voice calm enough to match the quiet room. "My name is Emma Carter. I'll be your nurse tonight." The man by the window never turned. Rain traced thin lines across the glass, blurring the lights of downtown Baltimore into streaks of golden blue. Emma noticed something the chart couldn't describe. It wasn't anger, it wasn't hostility. It looked more like exhaustion, the kind that settled into someone's shoulders. After carrying far more than anyone else ever knew, instead of walking directly toward him, she moved slowly until she entered his line of sight. Then she smiled without speaking another word. She raised her hands. "Good evening." "Commander Hayes," she signed in fluent American Sign Language. "I'm Emma, may I come in?" Everything changed. The retired Navy SEAL looked up immediately. His eyes widened, not dramatically, just enough to reveal genuine surprise. For nearly 3 days, doctors, nurses, therapists, and specialists had spoken around him, over him, and sometimes about him. No one had spoken to him, not in the language that mattered. A faint smile appeared across his weathered face. He answered in smooth, practiced signs. Finally, someone introduced herself. Emma smiled back. My father always said introductions matter. Commander Hayes nodded slowly. He was right outside the room. The hallway had grown strangely quiet. The laughter that had followed Emma toward room 214 disappeared almost instantly. Vanessa glanced through the narrow window in the hospital door. "What is she doing?" One nurse leaned closer. I think they're signing." Another lowered her phone. "No way." Officer Maya Johnson noticed the sudden silence before she noticed. She quietly stepped closer, careful not to interrupt the privacy inside the room. Years of police work had taught her that respect often revealed more truth than force ever could. Inside, Emma pulled a chair beside the bed. Instead of standing over the patient, it was a small gesture, one she had learned during nursing school. Sit with people whenever possible. It reminds them they're speaking to another human being, not just another employee. Commander Hayes appreciated the gesture immediately. "You've worked with deaf patients before." He signed. Emma smiled softly. "My father lost most of his hearing when I was little." His eyebrows lifted. "So your first language?" "American Sign Language." Commander Hayes leaned back slightly, almost laughing. "They sent the wrong nurse if they were trying to embarrass you." Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" He glanced toward the hallway window, where several curious faces quickly disappeared. "They've been watching that door all evening." Emma didn't answer. She didn't need to. She already understood the assignment hadn't been random. It had been entertainment. Commander Hayes watched her expression carefully. "You don't seem angry. My dad taught me something." Emma signed. "People reveal their character long before they reveal their intentions." The old veteran considered that for a moment, before giving a quiet nod of approval. "Your father sounds like a wise man. He built bridges for the city for almost 30 years. Then he understands service." He does. Emma opened the electronic chart on her tablet. "Would it be all right if I performed a proper assessment?" Commander Hayes smiled. "You're the first person who's asked." She checked his pulse, his breathing, his oxygen level. Then she gently examined the surgical dressing on his shoulder. Everything appeared stable, almost. Something didn't feel right. His face tightened every time he shifted his weight. She looked up. "Are you in pain?" He answered without hesitation. 7. Emma paused. The chart from the previous 3 shifts recorded exactly the same note. Every few hours, patient denies pain. She looked back at him. "You've been hurting this whole time." He nodded. "No one asked me." Those 4 words landed harder than any alarm in the hospital. Emma quietly updated the chart herself, documenting his actual pain level. Before requesting a review from the on-call physician, Commander Hayes watched every movement. "You don't seem interested in proving anyone wrong." Emma finished typing before looking back at him. "I'm here to make sure my patient is heard." Outside the room, Officer Maya Johnson folded her arms thoughtfully. She had witnessed difficult situations throughout her career as a police officer, but this one reminded her of something every good servant eventually learned. Authority earned respect, compassion earned trust, and trust often revealed the truth long before an investigation ever could. Inside room 214, Commander Hayes looked toward Emma with an expression far different from the guarded silence that had greeted everyone else over the past 3 days. For the first time since arriving at St. Gabriel Memorial Hospital, he no longer looked like a difficult patient. He looked like a man who finally believed someone had chosen to see him before choosing to treat him. Emma had barely finished updating Commander Hayes's chart when a gentle knock came at the door. Officer Maya Johnson stepped inside, removing her patrol cap out of respect. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said with a warm smile. Commander Hayes looked toward her before signing a short greeting. Emma interpreted naturally. "He says, 'You're welcome to come in.'" Officer Johnson smiled. "Please tell him I served 12 years before transferring to hospital security. Different uniform, same promise. We protect people," Emma translated every word. The retired Navy SEAL's face softened. He signed back slowly. "Then we both understand what service means." Officer Johnson nodded even before Emma finished interpreting. You'd be surprised how many people forget that. For several minutes, the room felt less like a hospital and more like three public servants, sharing the same purpose from different paths in life. One had defended the country overseas, one protected her community with a badge, one had chosen to care for people when they were at their weakest. Different careers, the same commitment. Officer Johnson eventually excused herself, but not before quietly saying to Emma, "If anyone gives you trouble tonight, you let me know." Emma thanked her and returned her attention to Commander Hayes. She reviewed his medications one by one, carefully signing the name and purpose of each prescription. When she reached the antibiotics scheduled for later that evening, Commander Hayes suddenly raised his hand no. Emma stopped immediately, allergic. He nodded firmly, severe. She checked the electronic chart twice. Nothing. No documented allergy. She looked back at him. "When did you tell the staff I couldn't?" Those words settled heavily in the room. Emma immediately contacted the attending physician in the pharmacy department. Within minutes, the medication order was cancelled and replaced with a safe alternative. The physician personally thanked Emma for catching what could have become a serious medical emergency. Outside room 214, whispers began spreading through the unit. "Did you hear the new nurse caught a chart error? Apparently she prevented the wrong medication from being given." Vanessa's confident expression slowly disappeared. She glanced toward the room through the narrow glass window. This wasn't supposed to happen. The rookie nurse was supposed to fail. Instead, she had quietly become the only person who truly understood her patient. By the following morning, word had reached the hospital administrator. A brief meeting was held with department supervisors. Nobody was interested in blaming people. They wanted answers. Why hadn't an interpreter been requested? Why had communication barriers been mistaken for non-compliance? How had an allergy gone undocumented? Questions filled conference rooms, while Emma continued doing exactly what she had done since the beginning. She cared for her patient, nothing more, nothing less. Commander Hayes requested that Emma remain his primary nurse for the rest of his stay. The request surprised no one who had witnessed the previous evening. Trust had replaced fear. Respect had replaced silence. Later that afternoon, Officer Maya Johnson stopped by room 214 one more time. Before ending her shift, she handed Commander Hayes a folded American flag lapel pin that officers in her precinct often shared with veterans during community appreciation events. "It isn't much," she said, "but it's a reminder that your service still matters." Emma translated. Commander Hayes accepted the small pin with visible emotion before signing back. "Thank you for continuing the mission." Officer Johnson placed a hand over her heart. "It never really ends," as she walked away. Emma realized something important. Real heroes rarely announce themselves. Sometimes they wore military uniforms. Sometimes they wore police badges. Sometimes they wore hospital scrubs. Every one of them chose service over recognition. Before Commander Hayes was discharged, he looked toward Emma with a quiet smile. "My hearing never came back." He sighed, "but today reminded me that being heard has very little to do with sound." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. "My father used to tell me something similar." "What was that?" She smiled. "He said kindness is the loudest language in the world because everyone understands it." Commander Hayes nodded. "Don't ever stop speaking it." As Emma watched him leave the hospital with renewed confidence, she glanced toward the busy hallway, where nurses hurried between rooms. Physicians reviewed charts, officers greeted visitors, and families waited beside loved ones. She realized every hospital, every neighborhood, and every community becomes stronger when people choose dignity over assumptions, compassion over pride, and service over status. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't winning an argument. It's taking one extra moment to truly see another human being. If this story touched your heart, I genuinely love to hear your thoughts. What moment stayed with you the most? The nurse's compassion, the veteran's quiet strength, or Officer Maya Johnson's reminder that true service continues long after the uniform changes? And if you'd like to see another inspiring story about courage, integrity, and ordinary people making an extraordinary difference, let me know what kind of story you'd like me to tell next in the comments.